Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our next Schuyler Center conversation. This is our fourth of our series of conversations with experts about policies that strengthen New York children and families, reduce child poverty, improve child well-being, and center equity and justice. Previous Schuyler Center conversations have focused on the child tax credit, child welfare, the New York State budget. And today's conversation is going to focus on one of my favorite topics, childcare. I'm Dede Hill. I'm Policy Director at the Schuyler Center for Analysis and Advocacy. And this year, Schuyler Center is celebrating our 150th anniversary. If you have been on calls with any of us who are part of the Schuyler Center team in these last several months, you are certainly aware that this is our birthday year. We are all super proud of this achievement and love to brag about it. Throughout our long history, we have fought hard for policies that improve the lives of New York's children and families. And in this moment, this year of 2022, this mission feels more important than ever. So Schuyler Center goals now and for much of our 50-year history, our goals have included advancing policies that will set New York State on a path to ending child poverty, to expanding access to high quality childcare and pre-K, to reducing racial disparities in all of our systems that serve families, but particularly a real focus on our child welfare system. And ensuring our Medicaid system serves and centers our youngest New Yorkers, and many other policies. So in today's conversation, we are going to focus on recent New York State child care budget and legislative wins, and how we can build from these real accomplishments and move toward a New York where high quality, affordable, accessible childcare is available to all New York children, and move towards a New York where the childcare workforce is paid a thriving wage. I am super excited to be joined in this conversation with two New York experts, and both are also amazing child care champions. So first, Maria Whyte. She is Deputy County Executive of Erie County, New York. She's held that role since January of 2015 and is the first woman in a generation to hold that title. I love that. In this role, Maria advances the county's most significant economic development projects. She provides strategic operational support for the county's many departments. She's held many other positions. Among them, she was Commissioner of the Erie County Department of Environment and Planning. She was the 6th District Erie County Legislator. I could go on and on. So super excited to have Maria here. I do want to provide some really important context, particularly we might have some folks joining us today who are not New Yorkers, not steeped in New York geography, but Erie County includes Buffalo, New York. Buffalo is our second largest city in the state. It is a city that we always hold dear, but are holding it particularly close at this moment when the city is still reeling, the whole state is still reeling from the racist massacre that occurred in May. So just needed to say that, and so excited to have you here, Maria. And then we're also joined by Shanita Bowen. She is Director of Operations and a family child care provider advocate for the grassroots organization ECE on the Move. ECE on the Move is a force to be reckoned with in New York City and around the state. They are a network of over 600 early care educators. They organize efforts to build up an equitable childcare system that is shaped by the needs of childcare providers and parents. And before the pandemic, Shanita was a family childcare provider for 17 years in the Fordham area community of the Bronx. So welcome, Shanita. Shanita is also one of our amazing fierce leaders of the Empire State Campaign for Childcare, which is New York's statewide campaign to bring universal childcare to New York. So thank you, Shanita. And before we dive deep into some of the wonky policy, can you start by sharing with us, Shanita, a little bit of your story as a childcare provider? I've been on a ton of calls with you, and I've heard you say so many times how much you miss your time as a childcare provider. You do not have, you're not running a program right now. Your program was one of the casualties of the pandemic. And if you could just talk a little bit, paint a picture of sort of what happened and what you miss most.
Hi, absolutely. First, I want to say happy anniversary, 150th anniversary to Schuyler Center. And I will say it has definitely been a privilege to work with you, Dede, and it's a privilege to join in this conversation with you. And thank you for all of the advocacy work we've done through the years to support caregivers and educators and families through all of your tireless legislative work in childcare. And I want to definitely say it's an honor to also hold conversation with the Deputy County Executive of Erie County, Ms. Maria Whyte. I am a very huge fan of your work. So thank you so much. I'm going to love this hour we have together. Yes, I did operate my small business, group family daycare, which is what we like to do, women like to do. It's an option to operate a business when you want to, it starts first, you want to make extra money and your home, and you decide you just love caring for the children, and your small business becomes a bigger business. You develop it, you develop educational components to it. Your home all of a sudden looks like a school. I loved my program. I operated it out of 2 rooms, and every room was just every nook and cranny was just something different for the children to do. It's just absolutely amazing time with the children. What I miss most is teaching, being innovative in how to teach the children of all of the ages. I miss all my firsts of crying when I didn't really know how to change pamper correctly, and then just through the years, you become an expert at it. It was just beautiful, wonderful. And I know most of the providers who are, if any providers are watching right now, they can share that experience. I did have to close down at the start of the pandemic, simply because I got married and I had to move. So when you move, you change licenses, the old one goes down, a new one comes up. And so I had made my flyers. I was ready to start serving again. Husband told me, what hours that he would accept this. And, I was very excited. And I remember I was ready to deliver flyers, and the city shut down that Monday. And so I was left with no children on my enrollment to benefit from the waivers that would come about. So no waivers. I could only count on if the essential workforce going to work at the hospital could pay. And there weren't many. And I did benefit from the LIFT. The Lower Income Investment Fund did give private grants, and allowed you to say what you needed the money for. That was the best thing that could have happened to me. It did allow me to serve a few children. And then again, without waivers and ability to apply for stabilization, I actually shut down. And I am looking forward to restarting childcare again. I do believe, I am very appreciative of the newer reimbursement rates, considering when I shut down, the rates were drastically lower. I do look forward to serving children again.
Thank you so much, Shanita. And we're going to circle back to those higher rates. Definitely want to talk about that in a minute. So, and thank you for sharing your personal story. And it's so important to ground ourselves in the why we need to work to create a better childcare system and to really support and center the childcare providers, who are overwhelmingly women, almost all women of color, and who we all rely, all of us who have had kids and been in childcare, really hold you among the most important people in our lives. Certainly, when our kids were in that phase, which I miss a lot because I have 2 teenagers, but I won't go into that right now. So I want to quick note to everyone in webinar land. If you have questions as we talk, throw them in the Q&A. We will try to get to them as best that we can, but really welcome questions. So I'm going to shift gears a little, give a quick overview of the significant new childcare investments that were included in this year's New York State budget that was passed in April of 2022. And I'm going to mention one really important piece of the New York City budget, which was passed, I believe, in June of this year, and then get some reactions, turn things back over to Maria and Shanita. So first, the New York State budget. So there were a lot of really important wins there. Most significantly, the budget included an expansion in childcare assistance for lower income families, raising the income eligibility cap from currently it is capped at 200% of the federal poverty level beginning on August 1st. So right around the corner, it will increase to 300% of the federal poverty level. It's estimated that approximately 260,000 New York children will be newly eligible for child care assistance. Given that child care costs families upward of $15,000 a year for a single child, this is an extraordinary, this is going to be life-changing for a lot of families. The budget also included another round of one-time stabilization grants, or short-term, I won't say one-time, short-term stabilization grants for childcare providers. And it's going to be principally focused on helping providers pay wages. These new grant applications just went online. So that's really, really important. And then also, as Shanita alluded to, there was a significant rate hike, an increase in the amount that providers will be reimbursed for those who provide care to families receiving child care subsidies. And so these are really important investments. And then I want to highlight just one really important development in New York City, which, important to note, is home to almost half of the state's children. The New York City budget included a $10 million fund, which will be used to ensure access to child care subsidies to New York City children, regardless of immigration status. And this is a really important development for New York City's children, and we're very hopeful that this program will be extended to benefit all the state's children. So with that, I am super excited to get reactions from Maria and Shanita. So Maria, I'm going to start with you. So what is the most urgent childcare challenge that you see in your community of Erie County, the one that keeps you up at night? And, will the investments that I just described, will they alleviate any of these, concerns? Will they help address any of these challenges?
Awesome, Dede. First of all, thank you for this opportunity. Shanita, I am delighted to be with you as well. So much I'm in here. Up at night the most, Dede, is the wages. That is the issue that really keeps and there's three reasons why that worry. Number one is just because it is outright, and I think, I always tell you to help mentor young people that you really need to try to work at the intersection of your passion and talent. That thing that you're really, really passionate about, and that thing that you're really, really good at. And when you can get somebody to pay you to work at that intersection, that is your life. You will be a happy person and the world will be a better place. And what you just heard from, working with young people and children and our of her passion and talents, that's, and the women, the largely women that are working in this sector, they are passionate about childcare and they are professionals. They are not down the street corner babysitters and I think that is a woefully inadequate understanding of the women in this industry. They are professional women who are professional educators who themselves have been trained as educators, and they are the front line of identifying early interventions for our kiddos. So I'll tell you my own story. My son was not meeting his developmental milestones at age 18 months and at 2-year-olds. And I had raised exactly 0 other 18-month-old kiddos, right? Like, this is my first kid. I'm 28 years old. What do I know about what is the developmental milestone and how, by the time this child is 2 years old, they should not be W sitting. They should be going up every other stair. They should be able to hold their pencil differently, right? And it is the professional women in the childcare industry that identified early intervention strategies for my kiddo. And that's because they're professional trained educators, and to not pay them that way is an injustice. So that's thing number one. Thing number two, Dede, about why it's upsetting to me and keeps me up at night is because it makes the kind of recruitment around new childcare providers really, really difficult. So we just talked about how one of the state budget wins is to grow the eligibility for families that are coming into the childcare system. But we are having a hard time recruiting childcare workers because those wages are absolute crap. Washington Post story from September of last year, the headline of the story, this is not my words, is Washington Post headline: the wages are absolute crap. So that is another part of the problem. And then I think the third reason why I find it upsetting, Dede, and why it keeps me up at night is because the government is part of the problem. When the government sets a standard, and we are, and I just mean we as in the public sector, sets that market rate at a rate that is so low, then that means unintentionally, but nonetheless problematically, OCFS is falsely suppressing the wages of women and minorities. That's like, we need to look at the policy and then analyze the outcome and name it. And the name of that is a state sanctioned false suppression of wages for women and minorities. And that's intolerable. We can't carry on that way. We can't continue to take advantage of the women whose shoulders are broad and who are amazing and on whom the entire rest of the economy is built, and not pay them properly.
Thank you, Maria. Yes, for too long, right? We have been relying on women, on these amazing childcare providers to do, always asking them to do more for less and less and less.
Right. And to hold up the entire economy on their shoulders while we exploit them. And that's woefully unjust. And we're on our way to changing it, thanks to the good work of the Empire State Campaign for Childcare and many of the other advocates around the country. But nevertheless, until it is actually changed, it remains an injustice.
Yeah. So Shanita, I want to keep talking about that. There's so much, we could spend the entire hour on that, but so I mentioned in the brief overview of the budget wins that one of them was a pretty significant rate increase. So every few years, New York State does what they call a market rate survey, and there are a lot of imperfections in the process, but by using this survey, they set new rates for paying childcare providers. And because of the pandemic and other issues, there hadn't been a market rate for 4 years. So we were, using rates that were derived from 4 years ago, when we know the world was completely different and costs were completely different. And then also sort of, as Maria was alluding to, it's sort of always been set artificially low. So this new market rate, it's more recent. It was just done, in the last year, and it's at a higher percentile. So it's a big boost. But Shanita, you've talked about how many providers in your network can't access, who serve childcare, who serve children who receive childcare subsidies, have a really hard time accessing rate hikes, and in fact haven't gotten a rate hike in years, not just this most recent. So I was so surprised to hear that. Can you explain how that happens and what that means for the providers in your network?
Oh, yes. Well, certainly thanks to all of the advocacy efforts with Empire State, Campaign for Childcare, ECE on the Move, so many organizations, providers are coming out and talking with their legislators. And this past year, providers across the modalities, across the state, all advocated for the reimbursement at the 80th percentile. We reported to OCFS that childcare providers who have been caring for children for many years, going beyond 20 years, have never received an increase from the reimbursements due to the extensive, time-consuming, over-detailed way of having to apply for these increases. So they don't even bother. OCFS in turn created the attestation form for providers that would assist only those who cared for children attached to subsidy vouchers. The fear was that providers who served private paying families would use the higher reimbursement rate as an opportunity to increase rates for private families, making access unattainable, unaffordable for families. This is an unfounded fear. The market rates and what families were paying was always below the true cost of care. ECE on the Move and NACE came together and made a survey form and asked providers to complete the survey anonymously to document what they were charging families within all the age groups. And what we found was that private paid families were already paying over market rates. The market rates are so low, it's very easy to pay over that. for this reason, advocates, we're all very careful to promote raising the workforce's reimbursement rates in conjunction with expansion of family eligibility. We do this together so that families don't feel when market rate increases on the provider end. And so we request, so it is so important for us to have automatic market rate increases across the board. When the rates go up, we should have it automatically. To ask providers to attest or to not afford the opportunity to have those rates automatically assumes that we're already getting what we're supposed to get as a workforce caring for children. We are not. That, just on that premise alone, the rates should increase for providers across the board, across the state as they come about. But this is a struggle that we're having, we continue to have.
Thank you, Shanita. I think it's just really important to, it's always so important to hear directly from providers, from parents about what's really happening on the ground. And I think, I know, I mean, I've been thinking about childcare for a long time, and I was shocked to learn that, you know, when you think about a rate increase that's based on, you know, doing a survey of every community in the state to determine, we all know, right, that costs have increased significantly in the last year and the last 4 years, particularly because the New York State, you know, each year has experienced an increase in the minimum wage. So, you know, that's, and of course, all the other costs have also gone up. So it just, you know, I always assumed that when there's a rate increase, that then everybody experiences the rate increase, that there wasn't another level of hurdles. So, so thank you for all the work the ECE on the Move has done to elevate this. And the Empire State Campaign for Childcare's position is exactly as you just said it, automatic rate increases. That's absolutely what should happen. And we're hopeful that it will. So I want to keep talking about implementation, right? So, you know, I talked about all these policy wins, and I think all of us know that you can put a lot of money into a problem, but if it doesn't get implemented properly, if it doesn't get to the people who need it, if the supports aren't rolled out in an effective way, free of administrative hurdles and other obstacles, much like these rate hikes, right, then the win doesn't mean very much, right? So Maria, can you talk to us about any implementation challenges that you're seeing or that you anticipate seeing in Erie County, maybe in relation to this expansion in eligibility that's about to happen on August 1st, or, you know, anything else that's on your radar?
I do think, thank you, Dede. I do think the expansion will be a problem, not because, I mean, that's the perfect example of a policy that's super well intentioned. And of course, we support that. It's just that so far, we haven't had the workforce, the return to the workforce in childcare that's going to be necessary to fully implement that statewide. So I imagine other communities, in addition to Erie County, will see some hiccups there. You know, we recognize that we lost, based on the study that Erie County did, we lost 1,100, you know, childcare workers just in, sorry, 11%. I meant 11% of our childcare workers, which translates into actually 3,000 workers. But 11% of the childcare workforce left the childcare workforce just in the 18 months between, you know, late 2019 and early 2021. So, So that, that's a hurdle that's going to be necessary in implementation. I think the other hurdle in implementation, Dede, is going to be around those stabilization grants. I mean, they had a rocky rollout the first time around. I think they were very slow. The state was very slow to get that money out the door. And I think they typically worked through the CCRNs, the Child Care Resource Networks, across the state. But I am concerned a little bit about the infrastructure in the implementation of those stabilization grants. We could see a lot of sort of overwhelming number of applicants that are going to be challenging to get through. The direct deposit issue. I know that that's an issue, and the state not really having contracts with direct providers, childcare providers, so having to identify a pass-through for that money, and all of that pass-through just creates additional administrative hurdles and slows things down. So I do think, in addition to actually having the workforce that will support the increased eligibility, implementation of the stabilization grants will be a challenge.
Thanks, Maria. Shanita, I'm gonna, sort of direct a similar question to you. I wanted to, and if you can speak to implementation, but in the context of two pieces of legislation that passed this last session and are awaiting signature by the governor. So the first is, we refer to it as the 24-month eligibility option. And so what that law would do is, right now, a family who applies for child care subsidies has to submit a significant amount of documentation to prove they are eligible. And the eligibility lasts for 12 months. And then they have to go through the whole process again. And it can be a very significant hurdle for a lot of families. And it's also really time consuming for the county administrators who are, doing tons of things. And they have to do this recertification. And the reality is that unfortunately, families' economic situations and other, relevant pieces of the application don't really change that often. So what this bill will allow is for the certification to endure for 24 months, and it's at county option. So that's one. And then the second is, we call it the decoupling child care subsidy from hours of work bill. That's a mouthful, but essentially right now a family can only get child care subsidies for the exact hours that the parent or parents are at work. And this is really hard, and hard for kids, hard for parents, hard for child care providers if parents are working part-time or have fluctuating hours. They have to pull their kids in and out of care. Child care providers have a really hard time keeping up with, fluctuating enrollment, et cetera. So federal law doesn't require that. So this law will allow the flexibility that families need and stability that families need by just not tying subsidy to these exact hours of work. So those are the two bills that are sitting on the governor's desk. And we hope she'll sign them any moment. Shanita, how do you think one or both of these bills will change things on the ground once they're passed?
Okay. So it would be great if New York could just be known as this child care centered type of state. From the ground, a provider is not thinking about all those different type of policies. That what we're faced with is families knock on the door and tell us what they need. Now, the decoupling bill that needs to pass, because parents come to us with all different types of situations that we, as the business owner and the provider, right in the building or right in the corner, right neighbor, we have to solve that problem. And a policy is, whether a policy passed or not, we have to solve that problem. So if a parent is going to work and then all of a sudden she wants to go to school, and the yada yada with the hours and the not decoupled, we still have to solve that problem. We still have to work it out with the parents. So I would love to see the state be more engaged in the issues of childcare that families have, and decoupling those hours from work requirement. That is all a part of it. This is intricate. Childcare is so intricate in our lives. Going to school, going to work, everything we need to do, we need childcare at some point in time. But again, the 24-month eligibility bill, that has to happen right now, because as we understand, ACS has a 12-month backup. So we are handling, and I'm sure they're doing their best, working hard. But the truth of the matter is, the wait list for families for ACS is, they're working on families on the applications dating back to July of 2021. That does nothing for families who have applied since then through today. So right now, there are no applications being taken. So this option, the 24-month eligibility option, would be helpful to the agencies, for HRA and ACS, to process faster, assuming that the family that needed it 12 months ago still need it for the next 12 months. Just, being more family-centered type of state that considers family needs of for childcare. 24 months is not a lot to ask for. I guarantee you, as a provider, the family that used me for 6 months, when it was 6 months, and then turned to 24 eligibility, 12-month eligibility, she will still need it. Many parents need it throughout the entire, all the children. We've had providers have had children from the same families, 2, 3 children. So no one's eligibility status is changing that drastically, that fast. So we need it. We need the 24-month eligibility, and we need that now. We can put out a survey to prove all of this.
I love ECE and the Move surveys. They're awesome. Maria, did you have anything you want to add from sort of the county perspective?
I don't, just that I agree. I really agree. I think the burden of having to recertify, in that process is noteworthy, and it's noteworthy both to the individual, but also to our social service staff. So, the idea of being able to change that window of time for an extended and longer period, I think is very useful.
So Maria, I'm going to yes, you can stay off mute. So I want to start, I know that you think a lot about like what's next, right? So we got some really important wins, and we have some right now implementation challenges that we hope we're all going to tackle together with our state leaders. But now what, right? I mean, big steps this year, but there's still so many families that are not going to be served, that are still left out, and there's still real challenges around wages, because we have some short-term solutions or relief, not even solutions, but we're going to be facing some real problems when the next round of stabilization runs out. So what's next? How do we figure out what's next?
I think I think we have to, a couple of things on that, Dede. The first one is we have to make sure that we don't give up the fight at the federal level. And while we can make a very specific ask of state government, the truth is, and I've been monitoring the comments in the chat. I mean, the truth is, the whole childcare system needs an overhaul. And, and we have to really reimagine as a country how we're going to treat the care economy in general. And, the Build Back Better legislation that was originally proposed, by the Biden administration had a ceiling on which families, would not have to pay more than their, than I believe it was 7% of their income on childcare. We already know that housing and urban development sets a threshold around housing at 30%. If you're paying more than 30% of your income, then you're considered housing cost burdened. Well, so I guess my first answer to the question of what's next is we have to continue to be really taking the fight to the federal government and making sure that the federal government is getting in the game here. And part of why that's necessary is because the true reimagining of how this works is going to require money, like resources. And, and local taxpayers can't sort that out alone. And it's not even, even just state taxpayers can't sort that out alone. Like we have to really, the federal government has got to shuffle the deck on, on how we are, bringing income into the government in the form of taxes and achieving the kind of public good that we have from early education and childcare, which should be considered early education. So I guess that's thing number one. And then my other comments on how to do that are to, continue to build the coalition of voices that are the most effective messengers, at all the different levels of government. And I appreciate, Dede, that you were going through my bio. The one part of my background that you didn't get to was, my right out of college, my first job, I served as the executive director of a nonprofit organization called the Coalition for Economic Justice and did community organizing. And there will never, ever, ever be a replacement to organized voices and organized people knocking on the doors of the system and demanding change. And the broader that coalition is, the more likely it is to be effective. And what has been so effective, and I think is noteworthy about why the wins were garnered in this year's state budget, is because this coalition is so broad, because it is diverse in terms of the population of people that are active in it, ethnically diverse, but it's also diverse in the types of stakeholders that are interested. This is an important issue for parents. It's an important issue for businesses who cannot find employees. And then when you examine that issue, why can't you find employees? And you start to really break down an analysis of the problem, then you realize, well, millions of women have dropped out of the workforce because they don't have any childcare. So, the coalition becomes broader based on the invitation to work with diverse stakeholders who really have a interest in this issue. And I think, how do we build a successful movement locally at a statewide level and at a federal level? We continue to build that broad-based, really diverse coalition of organized voices with an organized message, making those kinds of demands. And if there's anybody else on this call that is a policymaker yourself, the only other piece of information I would add to that is to just really be loyal to the concept of proximity. And we talked a little bit about this, Dede, like, lawmakers have, and everybody, we have limited resources, and those limited resources are time and cash. So we need to make sure that we use the time that we have and the cash that we have to solve the right problem. And if we are not proximate enough to the problem, we will not use our power, which is time and resources, to solve the right problem. So that requires an intentionality around being proximate to the issues. And though, you know, the parents, the providers, the business leaders, the stakeholders that are a part of this webinar, you know, your job is to help, you know, be in the face of the lawmakers and bring the problem to them and create that proximity. And if you're a lawmaker on this call, your job is to have your listening ears on and to pay attention to that, so that when you are exercising the power of your office, you're doing it in a way that solves the right problem. So we have to keep building, because there are some terrific wins, and the Schuyler Center, the coalition of stakeholders that are on this call deserve tremendous credit for having garnered those victories. But there is more to be done, and it will take ongoing organizing and ongoing building to make it happen.
There's so much there. Thank you so much, Maria. I right now I'm thinking time and cash, but there's so many others. So thank you. I'm going to just pause for 1 second, and then I'm going to give Shanita the last word here. There are some great questions, and one that sort of ties in with Maria's point was a question about, you know, what are the next steps for getting appointments made to the Child Care Availability Task Force, and how do we get them to be in laying the framework for universal childcare and really implementing that framework. So the task force there was legislation that was passed that extended the tenure of the task force, and it expanded its mission. And we have been told that there is a hope that the task force will begin to convene again by the end of summer, or I would imagine more likely in early fall, and appointments are still being made. I think the best ways to get the attention of the task force and get appointed, let folks know on the Empire State Campaign, because we're putting together a slate. But then also you could reach out to your state senator, your assembly member, because the leaders of each house get 3 appointments. Most important, and we're pushing hard for powerful parent and provider voice on the task force. And I think this also ties in with another great comment about how overly complex our childcare system is. It gets in the way of itself. I think that there's no question. We don't have time to talk about how to solve that, but that's one of the jobs of the Childcare Availability Task Force, is getting experts and providers and parents all together to figure out how we can fix this, you know, sort of in some ways fundamentally broken system. There are definitely ways to do it, but we need, you know, a lot of minds working on that. Shanita, I have a question for you, very similar to the question I posed to Maria, but what does, you know, we got some wins, so much more to be done. What does New York need to prioritize next on the road to getting us to universal childcare? We're, you know, we should get there next year, but we're probably not, right? But maybe just a few years. But what do we need to do next year? Like what is a top priority for you and the providers you represent?
Oh boy, in one word. Well, first I want to say exclamation point on everything Maria said. Exclamation point times 10. Thank you. Wages. To uplift the profession of caregiving, care about it. We care about the children. We can't care about children if we're not cared about. It's a distraction. It's a distraction to not be paid properly, to not have benefits, pensions, retirement, all those things, the American dream. We cannot participate in the American dream, period. Poverty. How do you accept children in the home and do your best and teach? I have to put a smile on my face. The children don't need to know, and families, you don't want them to know that you have to figure out what you're eating, but they're eating well through, CACFP guidelines. They're eating well. That costs money more than you're being reimbursed for that. So much is going out. You're paying minimum wage or better to your assistants so you can retain that workforce. All of the overhead, you have to pay this workforce. We have yet to walk out. Don't encourage us. You heard it here. But no, in all serious, it's very serious matter. You have to pay the workforce across all of the modalities. New York has to lead this way. Lead the way until all the legislators and major businesses makes childcare an essential sector with fiscal implementations. We're going nowhere fast. Stabilizations are quick fixes. Just pay. You have providers who have their degrees, many different types of degrees, overqualified. There's no career ladder. There's nothing. And I have to say publicly, family childcare providers in particular are being herded into initiative after initiative, hoping for the best. Herded into initiatives, meaning come join the networks, come join this and that. It'll be lucrative. There's no lucrative nothing going on. There is still no benefits, no good pay, bad pay, wondering if they'll get the 80th percentile. And these are the same providers that advocated for higher rates. They're being told it's a suggestion. The market rate is a suggestive rate. The market rate is not even the new rates are not even the cost of care, true cost of care. So that's out. Pay the workforce for quality. The quality care is, you have to pay quality price for that. And then help families be able to afford that. We raise both sides of the equation at the same time. This is what we need. Until this happens, we're going nowhere fast. I hope I'm not screaming.
Bravo. That was, yes, thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna start closing things down, even though I would love to just talk all day. So I just a few, first of all, I let's harness this energy, and I'm gonna give everybody two, they're small but super important action steps to take right now that could really not solve the childcare crisis, but take us a long way. So one, as Maria talked about, to really get to universal childcare, we need serious public investment, and we need it from all levels of government. The federal government is one piece of that puzzle right now. At this moment in Washington, D.C., they are negotiating the next budget. They are negotiating reconciliation. Childcare should be in there. There is a strong, not Build Back Better, but a strong proposal that until very recently was front and center in reconciliation. We are hearing it may not be there anymore. New York State is the home of the Senate leader. Senate Leader Schumer needs to hear from all of us. Childcare must be in reconciliation. Yes, Jamaica has put a link. We make it very easy. Please click on that link. Let Senator Schumer know this will not stand. Childcare must be in reconciliation. And then action number 2, call or email or otherwise contact Governor Hochul, thank her for being a leader in childcare, and ask her to sign the decoupling bill and ask her to sign 24-month eligibility. I believe Jamaica included a letter or that we have to that effect. And please take that action as well. Thank you everyone so much for giving us some of your time today, and please stay tuned. There will be more conversations in our Schuyler Center conversation series, because we are still celebrating our 150th anniversary. We have a few more months left, and we are going to celebrate us for as long as we can. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you.